Welcome to Modern Farm Business Podcast. This podcast is designed to help the farm leader bring their business to the next level. We'll cover everything from leadership and finance to strategy and planning. I'm your host, Dean Hefta. This is how we put the tools back at the end of the day. We wear steel-toed shoes here all the time. There's no tobacco use allowed on the property. These are statements of standards. Today, we're talking about the power of standards when it comes to our business and our lives. As leaders, we're charged with building strong business systems, developing our staff, and keeping a clear vision of the future in our minds. Standards are a key component of what's at work under the surface when we see successful businesses and families. So, what's a standard? The dictionary defines it as a level of quality of attainment. I believe that short description does a good job of helping us to understand how standards fit into our job of creating the business and life that we want. What's interesting about standards is when we're customers at a business, we usually only encounter standards when they're missing. Here's some examples. Have you ever been to a restaurant and you've gotten a dirty plate or a glass? There's a standard missing. Have you ever driven through a town and seen the sidewalks covered with weeds and gutters filled with trash? The standard is missing. Or here's a personal experience where I've seen standards change over time. The hotel in my wife's hometown for a long time was really well kept. It was clean. It had a really nice pool. But a few years ago, there was new owners that bought it. And within a year, the pool had deteriorated to the point it couldn't be used anymore. Cleanliness of the rooms fell, and you could see from the parking lot there's been a significant change in how much occupancy they've been dealing with. All thanks to new standards. Standards are those handful of critical levels of quality that we decide as important in achieving our vision. So for them to be useful in our toolbox, as leaders, we need to have a handful of things. First, we need a picture of an ideal future. If we run a farm, it could be how we see it looks when we drive by in 5 years. Or maybe it's the comments that we envision our neighbors making about our operation. Maybe we run a restaurant. It could be our vision of the comment a food critic is going to write about us in a year. Next, we need to identify the areas that are significant in contributing to the vision. For our restaurant, it's understanding that we need to focus on those components of service, cleanliness, ambiance, and great food. At our farm, it may relate to productivity, maintenance, tidiness, and professionalism. Finally, it's determining the handful of key standards that we must focus on in each of those areas as leaders. It's those levels of quality that we're defining. Often there's only a handful of standards that everyone needs to understand. And when we focus on those few critical things, those behaviors and those thinkings begin to spill over into other areas of our business and lives. Think about it like this. If we have the standard that every evening, the shop needs every tool returned to its home, do you suppose that type of thinking and behavior will spill over into other areas of our business? If our restaurant says our standard is, with our employees, if you have more than one no call, no show, you can't work here anymore. Do you suppose if we implement that consistently, that we are communicating how important it is to be responsible as employees, and that's going to have a positive impact in other areas? Think about the military. Is having perfectly shined shoes or immaculately made bunk going to help us to win a battle? No, not directly. But these standards become symbols of our identity, and they spill over into doing quality work in other areas. The military knows that how you do the little things will often translate into how you do the big things. If you can't shine your shoes right, can you be trusted to load the weapon system correctly? Here's an example out of New York's cleanup effort in the 1980s. What they did is they focused on comparatively small things. One thing they did is they would arrest gate jumpers at subway stations. This was a very small standard that had really been overlooked for a long time. But what they realized was if we can focus on the little behaviors, that can translate into not cascading into big bad behaviors. And so what they found was by not focusing on the little laws, they were seeing more and more violations and violence in other areas. By focusing on the little things over time, that focus on the little standards turned into a tremendous culture change throughout the city. So the handful of standards that we establish become teaching opportunities and avenues toward quality. They also become an expression of our own personal values. They show what we care about as leaders, because it's rare that the team is going to care more than its leader, at least not for long. Here's what you can do to harness the power of standards in your business or in your life. Think about one area that you want to look or perform better in the future. Now consider one activity that gets done in that area, something that is closely linked, that if it was done well, if it was done with excellence, it would contribute to that area performing better. Now, invest your focus and attention, whether that's on yourself or your team, on the implementation of that excellence for 2 months, consistently doing it to the level that you envision. Now, monitor those outcomes after the course of 2 months and see, have we seen other improvements? Has this focus on one area helped us to get closer to that vision? You'll want to see, is this making a difference? And if it is, the odds are you continue and your team continues to integrate that into, this is how we do things here. It becomes a quality standard. And once you've established a quality standard, it becomes easier now as you bring new people into the process for the culture to help support how things get done here in a quality way. Here's a word of encouragement for you. Standards aren't for catching people doing the wrong things or to beat people up over them. Standards give us a step towards excellence. They allow us to coach people towards them. Standards reduce the amount of time that might be required of us in making one-off decisions. So the question comes up, is it okay if Tim over here wears shorts today? Well, if I don't have a standard, then every time a situation comes up, I have to make a new decision. That can be very taxing. But maybe my response is, no, it's not okay. And it isn't because we don't like Tim. It's because we made a decision 6 months ago that on this team, we don't wear shorts. I hope this has been thought-provoking and you found some tools here that you can apply to your business and your life. I appreciate you joining me on this episode of Modern Farm Business. If you have stories to share or thoughts or questions, be sure to reach out to me at dean@modernfarmbusiness.com. And I look forward to seeing you again next week.